Hey everybody, Fishman here. Welcome to another video. Before I get into putting you guys to sleep with the chemistry of carbon in fish tanks, I thought I would mention a change to some of the upcoming program. It's not a planned change, but we are currently now under an even stricter lockdown, which means that client that I was going to be building the large U-shaped paludarium for, that is on hold. And that hold is probably going to be for at least 28 days, because that's the length of what they're saying for the lockdown at the moment. If anything changes, I'll let you know. But I thought in the interim what I would do is get onto that indoor pond that I was planning on building. The one that was going to be on the rack. And also I was planning on putting a few small tanks, a small rack basically that's going to go up the back of this as well. Because there's some other interesting projects I want to do involving that. So hopefully that'll be interesting. And at some point we'll get to being able to do other projects as well that are, like I said, currently on hold. Alright, so hope you have your pillows. It's time to get into some chemistry. What brought about this video is there seems to be a bit of confusion, or at least a bunch of different perspectives on what carbon does in an aquarium and whether it's necessary and all that sort of stuff. And this all came about, of course, because the last couple of videos I've done where I was removing not beneficial chemicals that plants are putting out. So I'm going to try and, like I said, I'm going to try and keep this chemistry at least reasonably light, mostly because I'm not sure how much detail you actually really want about this. But don't worry, in the end, I will get to why I use carbon and what benefits it has, and in situations where I actually don't like to use it at all. And hopefully by the end of this, I'll not have confused you more or caused more issues. Hopefully this will straighten things out. So I'm going to start off with the simplest aspect of your aquarium, and that is the water. Now water is not what you think it is. Even though it's always been told as H2O, it is actually quite complex. It forms complex molecules. I won't get into that because the chemistry of complex molecules is insanely difficult, and it takes an awful lot of background before I can even make it reasonably understandable. But what happens is, when water is neutral, in other words a pH of 7, it is pretty much H2O. But if you end up with the pH sliding into the acidic side, so less than 7, you end up with more of the H plus than of the H2O. And that means that is the indication of it being acidic. And then when it goes above 7 into the alkali end, you end up with more of the OH negative. And that is when your tank is obviously getting more basic and more alkali. And that is as much as the complex aspects of the chemistry I'm going to get into. But what happens is those charged particles form bonds, like they're ionic bonds. They're not covalent. They're just ionic bonds, which means they have a loose interaction with polar organic molecules that are in the water. And these forms rather large groups. So what happens when you put carbon in? Carbon likes to absorb organic molecules. So when it comes in contact with these organic molecules, it absorbs them, but it doesn't just take them sometimes. It will take other things that are involved in these complex organic molecules. And like I said, I was rather concerned about getting into this in too much detail. I'm going to leave it at that as far as the chemistry goes, because sometimes you can remove a bit of nitrate, which is NO3-, if it's involved in one of these complex ions. But if you had it pure inorganic water, pure nitrate, no organic molecules, carbon will not remove the nitrate. But again, like I said, there is instances where that will happen. None of that really pertains to what I was talking about in the original video. In the original video, all plants, especially aquatic ones, will emit molecules which they are intending as defense mechanisms. And as I said in the prior videos, it is intended to keep things from eating them and also to produce an environment which is more conducive to them growing. Now, in aquariums, I only use carbon for pretty much two specific reasons. I don't use it regularly at all. The first one is on large aquariums, especially large aquariums like African cichlid tanks. I'm talking like 300 gallons and up. where there aren't any plants because the Africans tend to eat them all, and it is a little bit more effort for me to do a large water change. So instead of doing that, I do smaller water changes, and every now and then I will hit the tank with a bit of carbon, and that helps clear up the water. And I find that's a really good method for keeping tanks that size clean. And the other time is in the rare instances where I'll end up with usually a species of algae that is like cyanobacteria, blackbird algae, that sort of stuff, which is really altering the chemistry sufficiently that regular plants won't grow, and they are sort of taking over. And this is a really good way of getting those small amounts of chemicals out and making the environment more favorable for the things you actually want to grow. And that's it. That's all I use it for. That is not saying that the carbon is having a negative effect on the chemistry of the water as far as the fish are concerned. If you have a community aquarium of fish, the carbon's going to be perfectly fine. It's not going to inhibit anything in any way, shape, or form. But if you're like trying to set up a biotope, an Amazon River type setup, or any other kind of black water, or a specific kind of chemistry, especially if you're adding leaves and that sort of stuff to get that slightly more acidic and more conducive environment for certain types of fish, don't put carbon on the tank. It'll be really counterproductive, to say the least. I prefer, when I'm setting, like especially smaller tanks like this size here, if there are issues, a small water change is usually often enough, unless of course things have been drastically disturbed, as like in this specific tank where I pulled everything out for a future experiment. Other than that, these things rarely occur, and you'll end up with, as far as most plants are concerned, this clip is coming up here shortly now. This tank here is my prime example for this sort of thing. There are, good lord, how many are there? 2, 4, 6, I think there are over 10 species of plants in here, and they all are doing perfectly fine. This tank is well populated with fish and plants, and they are all from completely different areas, and they're all, again, perfectly healthy and fine. And even on this tank here, I don't really do that much in the way of water changes. I do a few, I mean, about once a month, probably in total, this is around about 25%, maybe up to 30%, and that's all this tank gets. And as you can see, everybody's happy, healthy, and swimming and doing all the stuff they want to do. Except that fish right there. I think she might be getting a little old. That's the problem with guppies. They end up having so many babies that they burn themselves out. And as you can see, it is growing really, really well. So, and I don't use carbon on this. I would never touch this tank with carbon. And like I said, it is the kind of thing that I find completely unnecessary. Again, if you are the type that wants to have crystal clear water, then the carbon does have a really big use for that. But anyway, like I said, I hope this really does help, and I haven't clouded things more. There is no, I mean, if I put carbon on this tank, it probably wouldn't have any effect. The final clip coming up is one that I think it would, but once the experiment that's currently running in that tank is over, I plan on putting carbon on that as one last sort of example of whether or not it does do anything negative. And you'll see as it comes up here, it is the soil experiment for the plant growth, and it's got nice tannins in the water. Everybody's happy and healthy again, and I think it would be detrimental to remove all that nice organic chemistry that's going on there, but I don't know for sure because again, there's an awful lot of soil that's in the actual pots and whatnot, and it may be able to withstand that much of a reduction in chemistry, but we'll see. Like I said, this tank here, once this experiment is over, which is probably going to be roughly around summertime, I will put carbon on this, and it will clear this to crystal clear, and we'll see if it changes how the plants grow, because I plan on keeping this going anyway, so we'll see when that time comes. So, thanks for bearing with me, and if you like this style of video, please like and or subscribe, leave comments, and even if you disagree with me completely, please leave a comment, let me know, and we'll have a discussion about it. And hopefully, like I said, I didn't bore you guys too much. And I'll see you in the next video, and bye for now.